Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. We can also be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring shattered lives. There's this interesting phenomenon I've undergone personally on numerous occasions. I've also observed some of my students and clients experience it over the 30-plus years of my shamanic practice. The phenomenon is known as an initiatory illness. In shamanic practices, it's often referred to as a dark night of the soul or a shamanic death. It goes something like this. A person is going along with their life, dumb and supposedly happy, living the dream or at least pursuing it, when their soul has other plans. Seemingly out of the blue, though in hindsight the handwriting may have been on the wall, their supposedly perfect or successful life is turned upside down by a debilitating illness or accident. More often than not, the illness is either a mystery or virtually untreatable, the accident life-changing to the point that the person cannot go back to living their ordinary life in the ordinary way. In all cases, the event eventually shatters their former life. A person is then confronted with several choices. Try to return to the same life until they fail miserably, sink into terminal victimhood, or decide to take control and beat the odds. Personally, being stubborn, I tend to pass through all three options before resigning myself to engaging in my new identity and life path. The important thing to remember is that on some level, we have chosen change. I was a mother of 2 children, a boy and a girl, the wife of an air traffic controller. We just completed building a home I had designed on a piece of property we'd chosen together. My career was carefully arranged, allowing me to make my own schedule in order to work around my family's needs. I had a small part-time shamanic practice. I was a massage therapist at a medical clinic and a successful wedding photographer. All seemed well with the world, except I felt incomplete. It was as if I had another driving purpose, but I couldn't find it. One day, while on my morning's walk, I decided I was sick of fooling around. I wanted to engage in my life's work, whatever that was, and make a difference in the world. I remember intending actually, I don't care what it takes. I want to heal on all levels so I can live my purpose. Remember the old adage, be careful what you ask for? After my walk, I went home, showered, and got into my car to go to work. I never made it. I was just entering a bridge on the road that passed over an irrigation ditch. It had a concrete wall on either side. A truck heading in the other direction at breakneck speed entered the narrow bridge at the same time I did. It veered into my lane, driving me off the road and head-on into a concrete bridge. Even though I was wearing my seatbelt, I took the steering wheel in the chest. My head snapped back and forth, sloshing my brain against the inside of my skull, and I went unconscious. After I regained consciousness in the hospital, it soon became very obvious that I had sustained considerable structural damage, including a severe whiplash, and I had no short-term memory. My injuries prevented me from working for 2 years. I tried to return to my role as mother and wife. I really did. But without a short-term memory, I could no longer track. Without being able to track, I could no longer maintain the codependent, enabling relationship I had with my family. Long story short, without me to mediate it, my family eventually blew apart. I was never able to do massage again as my neck injury prevented me from doing so. My inability to track ended my wedding photography career. I was unable to use my interior design degree for the same reason. I was left alone to support and finish raising my children with only the dubious skill of shamanic practitioner. As a result, I systematically built a new life wherein I am living my purpose. My guest this hour and her late husband are, in my opinion, shining examples of individuals willing to transcend their personal shamanic death to engage in their soul's purpose in service to others. ROBBIE HOLZ is an international respected healer and speaker. She's the author of the award-winning book Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and her memoir Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. Using Australian Aboriginal principles, she healed herself of hepatitis C, fibromyalgia, and treatment-induced brain damage. ROBBIE has also participated in ceremonies with the Aboriginal tribeswomen in Australian outback. She's passionately committed to help people worldwide activate their powerful inner healer. ROBBIE is a frequent TV guest on radio and TV programs internationally and across the U.S. You can visit ROBBIE's website at www.holzwellness.com. I'll introduce ROBBIE and her fascinating work and her exciting stories of initiatory illness after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. This and other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our special guest this hour is internationally respected healer and speaker, ROBBIE HOLZ. She's the author of Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. Now, I have to confess that in my experience, memoirs tend to be ever so much more interesting to the people who write them than those who read them. Imagine my surprise when I sat down to skim Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening in preparation for our time together. I became so engaged that I found myself 4 hours later having devoured the entire manuscript. Many of the things ROBBIE related in her story would seem fanciful if dubious authenticity had I not experienced most of them all myself. ROBBIE, thank you so much for the courage to share your story and for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
In your memoir, you relay your passage from living the American dream through your initiatory illness. Would you share with our listeners how that came about for you?
Sure. It sounds so similar to yours. It's just mind-blowing. I was living the, American dream, and we had this beautiful house that we were in the midst of building and a successful career. And then I ended up, within a very quick period of time, finding myself in a hospital fighting for my life. I had had a blood transfusion years earlier that I didn't know was tainted with hepatitis C, and the hepatitis C had sort of come out of the basement, so to speak, and it was killing me very quickly. And I just was determined to stay alive because I had a little boy who was too young to remember me, and I just knew that I had to find answers. And so I ended up eventually almost dying twice, once from the hepatitis and the second time from the experimental treatments that they put me on. And it just put me, and at this point I was left in such bad shape I couldn't finish a sentence. I couldn't remember what I was talking about. I couldn't get out of bed for about 9 months. I couldn't remember how to get the water out of the tap. I mean, it was just, I was in really bad shape, but I was determined to find answers to survive, and that's when I started realizing there are all kinds of answers out there, just because Western medicine didn't have anything. And since then, I have healed myself of everything, the hepatitis C, which they said was incurable at the time, the chronic fatigue, the brain damage, the fibromyalgia, all of that. So it's very doable if people recognize what they're doing and how to turn that around.
Can you remember intending anything that brought about this hugely transformative experience?
No, I just couldn't. Honestly, I don't know about you, but I went into this kicking and screaming. I just wanted my life back. And it really, I never had any imagination that I would even go anywhere near what I'm doing now. And I have to say that, and I'm sure you'd say the same thing, following your soul's intention, what your soul has in mind for you, you are just going to love what you end up doing. I passionately love what I do now, and it's making such a huge difference for people that it just doesn't get more fulfilling than that. So I didn't see it coming. I really, but when you just allow spirit or divine or whatever you call that to work through you, it's amazing where it will take you and how much you're going to love it.
That's certainly been my experience. So after recovering somewhat from your first life-threatening illness, you attempted to return to your old life. What happened?
Oh, yeah, I'm stubborn. I don't know about you, but I just got sucked right back in again. And so I got well enough to go back to my old job, and which was extremely stressful. But at the time, I thought I thrived on stress, but my body did not. And of course, I just got knocked back down again. And this time, even worse, to the point where there's no way I could go back to my work. I lost my memory. I lost my ability to function. So I had to, the second time you crash and almost die, this time you're really in bad shape. You do not come back as quickly as you did the first time. So it took years to sort of dig my way out of that. And but it was that tenacity and wanting to survive and thrive for my son that really kept me going. But I don't know about you, as far as it changed everything. It changed my job. I ended up leaving a beautiful 30-year relationship. My husband, we're very good friends, but it just changed everything in my life to put me on a different path than I was on. I was not
as a result, I'm sorry.
I didn't have the spirituality, just was missing in my life. It was like this hole, this void. And so this put me on that path of searching for that answer to, what feels right and what feels fulfilling in the spiritual area. And that's where the answers started coming, and it just changed my life dramatically.
So it kind of sets you on this obsessive path with metaphysics that eventually led to you meeting your proclaimed soulmate and late husband, Dr. Gary Holz. Can you tell us how that happened?
Sure. I just got this sense that I needed to leave this relationship of 30 years with my husband. He's a beautiful man, but I could see that spiritually I was being torn in a different direction. It just didn't fit him. So we left amicably. And then a year and a half later, I met this man who was actually a very astounding healer. He had remarkable abilities. And apparently the first time he met me at a 4th of July party, all the past lives flashed across my face, which freaked him out, but he didn't tell me about that for a long, long time. But he just knew that there was a connection between us. And so that's why he was pursuing me. And I had no interest in being pursued by him. I wasn't interested in a relationship. But what happened was I had I come from a big Catholic family, lots of kids. And that's how you know you're a good Catholic family. You have a lot of kids, no birth control. So one of my sisters back in the Midwest was going blind from a rare disease, uveitis, and she had just a tiny bit of vision left in one eye. That was all. And Western medicine didn't have any answers for it. And he said, send her out. I think I can help her. And so she flew out here to Seattle, trusting me, and he healed her in 4 days. And I knew he had done that out of love for me, and something just flipped that switch, and I instantly fell in love with him and knew then that we would be together forever. And I then understood and knew that we had been together many times in the past.
It's got to be exciting to finally meet your soulmate. Before you met him, Gary had been a physicist, and he experienced an initiatory illness of his own. Can you explain how this brilliant scientist ended up seeking out healers in a remote Aboriginal village?
Yeah, because that was quite a shift for him. He was just a brilliant physicist and an inventor, and very highly respected in the scientific world, which is also very black and white. It doesn't exist unless you can prove it to me. But he had multiple sclerosis, and he had ended up being a quadriplegic, which meant he had very little feeling and movement from the neck down. And the doctors told him he really didn't have much time to live. He probably had about 6 months, and Western medicine had nothing for him. And he met serendipitously a naturopathic doctor from Australia who told him that the remote Aborigines have amazing healing gifts. And we go into this in detail in Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, but basically he went into this outback with this remote tribe, very small tribe, and 10 days later came out with feeling in his body, which he hadn't had in 7 years, clumsily walking down the airplane aisle, supporting himself on these seats, totally transformed. And the Aborigines gifted their healing secrets to him because they said, we really don't understand how healing works. And so he spent the rest of his life taking their healing wisdom out.
As amazing as that journey was, you say that the real story happened after his Aboriginal experience. Can you tell us what was so remarkable after Gary's return from the outback?
Well, that's pretty remarkable to have that happen in 10 days' time. But he came back from the outback, and then he knew that he was so fired up about what the Aborigines had taught him and their beautiful ancient wisdom. He got a degree as a doctor in immunology because he knew that he could use that to help promote their healing techniques. And so he practiced psychoneuroimmunology. That's how the mind influences the body and the immune system. And he started developing the abilities that the Aborigines had taught him, where he could start seeing into the body. The skin was transparent. He could see tumors inside. He could see the chakras spinning. He could see auras. He could see spirit guides. He became telepathic to people and to animals. And I always found it fascinating that most people did not know he was conversing on a deep subconscious level except the autistic people and children. Autistic always knew when he was communicating to them subconsciously. So he started developing more and more of these gifts that the Aborigines just have. They've always developed those gifts. They've never stopped being connected that way.
That's amazing. That's been my experience with autistic children as well, as they understand my nonverbal communications. And a lot of what you shared about Gary's abilities would seem fanciful and crazy to me, except I've experienced them. And it's amazing how parallel they are. In the process of transitioning from being a physicist to an energy healer, it sounds like Gary combined his formidable scientific knowledge and natural psychic abilities with the healing practices of the Aboriginals he studied with. This is quite different than simply learning rituals, appropriating them, and hanging out a shingle. Can you speak to how our listeners can discern a competent shamanic healer such as Gary from the numerous self-proclaimed shaman now popping up all over?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that the thing about Gary was he was very humble, and he just felt very humbled to be a conduit for this energy force, this life force moving through him, this healing that moved through him. He always felt, and I feel the same way, it's not that we're doing anything, we just are fortunate enough to be part of the process, and sometimes planting seeds, and we may not even see what happens, but we don't have a real strong attachment to the outcome because we know it matters what that soul intention is. Are they ready to heal? Are they supposed to heal right now? So that was the first thing he did, was to ask, are we supposed to help this person? Because it's really most important. What does the soul intend? And I really want our listeners to hear, most of us are not supposed to be getting sick. Most of us, our souls want us to be well. It's just that our bodies cannot handle the toxic emotions that we're exposed to. And so I really hope people hear that. The body wants to heal. It knows how to heal. It's just the emotional components are usually what's creating the problem. That's what the Aborigines have taught us.
Robbie, this is just fascinating. We're going to have to take a short break. We'll return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. You want to hear more? Other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is healer, speaker, and author of Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening, Robbie Holz. www.holzwellness.com. Robbie, thanks for coming back.
Thank you. I'm loving this.
I'm having so much fun. Your late husband Gary spoke of this limitless healing capabilities that the divine source offered to him, and this is really, as I understand it, what he channeled. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, he came back from Australia and kept developing these abilities where he would. He would put his hand on people like the back of their neck and allow this life force healing energy to come through his hand into people's bodies. He also worked with what we called a solar angel, Julie, where she could work through him. She was able to see through his eyes. And I think what he was really good at was focusing. And so she needed somebody who could really focus, and he could watch her laser tumors off. He could see that happening. So it was very important that he stay focused while she's doing this. So he got to the point where eventually he didn't need to be with the person. He could do it remotely with a photograph, and then he got to the point where all he needed to know was their first name and what city they're in. And that was enough for Julie, the solar angel, to sort of hook up and connect, and, they could do their healing work together. It was pretty amazing watching it happen, how it got to the point where he could even do groups at a time. And I think what happened, and you may have experienced this too as you move down your shamanic path of healing others, is you just keep opening up more and more. It's not that he always had those abilities, it's just that it took him a while to be comfortable and confident in it. And that's what happened. So and I come from a very conservative Midwestern Catholic background. This was just mind-blowing. Like you said, if you hadn't seen it, you never would have believed it. So I just saw way too much to know that this is real. This is really happening. And that was the thing that the Aborigines taught him the most, is that it exists even if you can't prove it, which you beautifully understand and help your listeners with that too.
What's required? It sounds to me like he was obviously just an amazing human being. And not everybody can channel this energy, even though it's available to all of us. What do you suppose was his secret? What was required to clearly channel this energy to the degree that he did?
Well, I think that was part of his soul's intention, part of his soul's journey. And that's what he discovered in the outback. The Aborigines told him that he had a lot of energy moving through him, enough to power a small city. That was news to him. So I think that was always part of how he was designed. I could see that he wasn't really like other people. He didn't even heal himself like other people. It was just amazing how quickly things happened with him. If he had a bruise, it was just gone almost within hours or a day or so. It was very different. And I also think that a big part of his journey, his soul's journey, was for him to be in that wheelchair. I think that was a really necessary component because, like the Aborigines, Gary would spend more than 50% of his time tuning in and connecting to the other side, which they'll tell you that's more real than what we think this world is. That's the Aborigines from the age of about 3 or 4. They start meditating or connecting in dream time or whatever you want to call it, where they are tuning in more than half of their time. And that's what Gary started doing. And I'd catch him in the kitchen, just tears rolling down his cheeks, where he's just so in awe and in these higher vibrational states of love from hanging out in these other vibrations and other realms and other dimensions and connecting. He connected to the Aborigines all the time. Distance meant nothing, time and space means nothing. So yeah, I think he was designed differently, and I think that wheelchair served I remember somebody asking him, you must hate that wheelchair. You must be so upset about the confinement of it. And he said, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced him to take away the distractions, because he was this globe-trotting physicist before, and it took away the distractions so that he really connected and had this inner journey, which was a lot of us miss because we have these very busy lives.
A truly initiatory illness, then. Apparently, he combined his mind or his intent with his healing powers. How did that work?
I think people don't realize how powerful we are as creators, and that what we're thinking and what our intentions and beliefs are is what is actually happening. So what Gary did and what the Aborigines did as well is they would see the person already well. They didn't go into the illness or the any of the symptoms. They went straight to putting energy into what the end result is, what they wanted to see. So when he would see that person well, the Aborigines would see him walking and see him well. And he ended up back in his chair again later at some point, and he went back to the outback and said to the Aborigines, I'm not totally healed. And they said, well, the rest is up to you. But they knew that it wasn't his soul's intention to ever entirely leave that chair, even though he could get by. He was much more independent, but he did end up in that chair again. And I think that it was part of his journey because, again, it forced him to just spend so much more time connecting and really listening and tapping into that inner intelligence that we all have access to.
And that's the challenge, isn't it, Robbie, is our whole world is designed around distracting us from that inner landscape that the Aboriginals live, the dream, the connection with all things. You wrote, and I quote, whether a patient got better or not had more to do with their soul's journey than our abilities. When a person heals or not is out of our hands. There are agreements at work we know nothing about. Gary could not heal someone if it was not their soul's journey to be helped. Would you speak to this?
Sure. I think that's a great question. So you have to recognize that when we have physical illness or these challenges, it's very deliberate. There's no accident. Everything happens for a reason. And sometimes it's to kind of wake us up and shake us up, like you and I both experience, big shake-ups. But a lot of times it's also designed for, not a lot of times, but sometimes it's designed for somebody to let go of this lifetime, let go of this body, and for not just that person, but their loved ones as well. So they may have a very painful cancer so that it's easier to let somebody go because their time is done. The soul isn't aligned with healing. We see often babies that come in with something, they may be autistic, they may have deformities or something, and it was very rare that we were allowed to assist a child or a baby because they deliberately came in that way because it was part of their experience and not just what they would experience, but those around them. So it was a necessary element. But for the most part, most of us, our souls are aligned with healing. And the Aborigines taught us that when you have an alignment of the body, mind, and spirit, all aligned with healing, anything can be healed, anything. And the other equation that I love that they gave us is that when you work with divine source plus the mind, that can equal anything. So you have to pay attention to what's the soul's input in this. Is it just to wake you up? Is it helping you become more enlightened? Is it helping you let go of mindsets? Usually what I see, and I do a lot of consultations, people are missing the emotional component. And the Aborigines taught us you've got to go back and get the emotional core that started this in the first place, or it's just like picking dandelion, it's going to come back again, or tumors are going to come back again. It's that emotional core that started this dis-ease, and that's why here, in the States, we tend to address the physical. That's just the end result. You've got to go back and figure out what are the emotional components. That's the big part that the Aborigines gave us, that's the piece that's missing. Because you're blocking energy.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, you're like if you have an autoimmune disease, that means that you've got a lot of fear and stress throughout the entire system. And that creates a different kind of cell. When you have negative or fear-based emotions, it creates a different cell. It doesn't hold as much light force. It's very sticky and gunky. It blocks and kinks the energy force moving through you and becomes an obstruction. So if you have, for instance, we tend to hold grief in our chest area. If you have a lot of grief and you're not releasing that, you're blocking energy and life force, and that chakra is slowing down in that chest area. And if you have a propensity in your family for heart disease or breast cancer, you really need to be aware of that and start more consciously flipping it over to more love-based emotions. Gratitude is a very healing emotion.
We're going to have to take another break. We'll be back on the flip side of this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Our theme song, One People, One Nation, is from the Winds of Time album by my musical group Starfire and can be found on iTunes.com, cdbaby.com, Amazon.com, and my website, GwildaWiyaka.com. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our very special guest this hour is healer, speaker, and the author of Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening, ROBBIE HOLZ. Her website is www.holzwellness.com. Robbie, this is just going so fast. You moved from the hectic, stressful life our society promotes into a life of self-healing, joy, spiritual connectedness. How does someone do that, even if their lives are busy and demanding? I'm sure our listeners would like to know.
Yeah, it's so easy to get sucked in. I think what happens is that you just become more conscious of your thoughts, and you just become more aware of what's going on. I'm learning to get as simple as I can, that simple and quiet is really the answer. So I quiet that mind more often and really pay attention to what's going on inside, because a lot of us are on autopilot, and a lot of us have a lot of fear and stress and negativity running in the background. I was raised Catholic, 12 years of parochial school, knee socks, blazers, the whole deal. And guilt was just my default mode and didn't know it. So I needed to just be more conscious of what was running in the background and choose to flip it over to more loving responses of being more gentle and kind and patient and compassionate. It's a choice. So I think that breath is powerful. Just take a couple breaths when you're feeling really stressed. And the more you're in a crisis mode, the more you really need to stay in the present moment. Don't let that mind abuse you by taking you off into the past or the future. Just get more present. That's really a key.
You know, you had mentioned that rather than fighting disease, Gary would hold the intention of his client whole and healed. And it seems to me like he had a deeper ability of really holding that vision of balance and wholeness that the person may never have even been in their entire life. Was that what you experienced with him?
Yes. I think that what I recognized working with him, because we were together for many years working as a team, is that, you don't fight cancer. You recognize that it's a messenger telling you that you're off balance, telling you there's something that needs to be adjusted, and that it's like that these emotions, if you keep going into a lot of anger or resentment, it's like a blinking light on a dashboard car. And if you keep doing it enough, now that light is lit up all the time, and it's called cancer, or it's called diabetes, or whatever. That's why you got to go back and figure out what was the emotional component that started it. And then what is really powerful that anybody can do is to see yourself well. Go to that end result. Go to that end result where you see yourself well, and then the mind, the body, and the universe start moving in that direction. So maybe you can put up on your bathroom mirror a picture of you when you were really well and felt fabulous and happy. And then you keep focusing on that, because what we're focusing on is what we're building on. And a lot of us are unconscious creators. We're focusing on stuff we don't want. We're focusing on the pain. We're focusing on, lack. And that's what we want to shift into, focusing on the abundance, focusing on what you are grateful for, focusing on a body that's healthy. That's powerful.
And do you find that when people are focusing on health, that suddenly what will bubble forth is all their belief systems of their undeservingness or emotional components that prevent that health, that starts to bubble forth to be recognized?
Absolutely. It's like the flu. It needs to come up, and you just simply observe it and let it go, The other thing that's really powerful, and this is what our next book is about, is this is what Gary learned, and this is what I've discovered, and I talk about that in both books, actually, but the Awakening book, how I realized that we all have a guardian angel with us, or spirit guide. Everybody has one. This is a free will planet. They're not allowed to step in and help with this. There's nothing wrong with pain and struggle. Those are some of our best teachers. But if you ask for help, they always respond. And they love helping because it's a way they get to grow. They're being in service and love. So ask your spirit guide or guardian angel to help you heal. Hand it over. Lean on them and tell them what you need every step, and let them guide you to heal. One time I wanted to lose weight, and so I'd asked my guide to help me do that. And I found one night I was eating a bag of something I shouldn't have been eating out of, and I accidentally dropped it, and it spilled all over the kitchen floor, and I knew it was my guide helping me, So there's a lot of ways they can help us, but we have to be sure to ask. And then what's your intention? My intention is to heal. Thank you for helping me.
That's beautiful. And we have to accept that help. I mean, they can't impose it on us. We have to be receptive to it. So you were able to look at the spilt bag of whatever it was and go, uh-oh, somebody's trying to tell me something here. You know what I find amazing through our entire discussion here is that you speak of Gary as if he's still with us, and yet his story did end in physical death, yet you continue to work with him from the other side. Would you share about that with us?
Sure. When he passed physically, I did not expect him to show up every morning at 8 o'clock. He was always very punctual, and he married a woman who was not, and it was always a joke between us. And he would show up, his energy would show up at 8:00 every morning, never 8:01 or 7:59. And he continues to be part of my work. I have this beautiful team of from the other side of the veil that helps with healing, and I do a lot of consultations and healing with people, and he's part of that team. He's very definitely connected to that team and guiding us and assisting us. So, yeah, he's very much involved.
It's beautiful. So there sometimes comes a time when we can help better from the other side, and we can choose to go there. You've stated believing that enlightenment is within everyone's reach through simple everyday steps. What simple steps can anyone take right now to find that enlightenment, Robbie?
Well, I think that the quality of your consciousness is really going to determine that. How present are you in the now? How present are you? And if you can have a little bit of presence on the inside of you rather than outside of you, but just sort of have that little presence inside at all times, it's like turning that dimmer switch up, and you have more consciousness that way. You can also raise that consciousness through paying attention to what kind of thoughts you have. Are you eating healthy, organic, vibrating food, or is it dead, processed food, which is going to lower your vibration and lower your consciousness? You just pay attention to what kind of energy you're creating and what kind of energy you're around, what your thoughts are, all these things. Being in nature is going to raise your frequency, your vibration, your consciousness. But the biggest one is just getting that mind to be more present in the now.
That's such an important point, Robbie, that, I'm trying to remember the scientist that came up with this formula. It's an amazing formula. And it's been, proven mathematically. And basically what it says is causality is equal parts the past and the future, but the only time we can manifest it is in the present. So if we can't be present with ourselves in the moment, we're too busy being wrapped around our old triggers, our old emotions, our fears, our concerns, our goals, whatever. If we can't be present, we really can't manifest much of anything. Is that what you've experienced?
Exactly. And that's what the Aborigines say, is that we just don't know how to really use our subconscious mind. We're just letting our mind have its way with us. So start controlling those thoughts and start focusing on what you want and putting energy and thought into what you want and being more present. Absolutely. Paying attention to, am I hanging on to thoughts that aren't serving me? Or is it more love-based? Love is always the answer. What would love do in this moment? Yeah, love would stay present.
Love is always the answer. Robbie, this has been absolutely amazing. I cannot thank you enough for your courage to share your work with the world and for your continued service in healing people and guiding people into enlightenment. I hope we get to do this again sometime. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to this and our other thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, as you live your soul's purpose.